Hey everyone. Um, Here's the first part of the Jurassic Alive 2.14 tier list, which will be the Carcass, Hatchling, and Scavenger tiers. So we have a few creatures to go over, so let's just get started. We'll be starting with Carcass tier and working our way up to Scavenger. So, our first one in Carcass is Dimorphodon. Dimorphodon is, in my opinion, probably the worst creature in the game again, although it is very close. Um, yeah, this thing is terrible. It's frail, it does basically no damage outside of bleed, its resistances really aren't that great. It has really nothing going for it. If it's lucky, it can get some good bleed damage out, but that's if it's lucky. Overall, it just sucks. It's just really bad. Our second carcass tier is Iguanodon. This was part of the old carcass tier before 2.14. It was the second worst creature in the game before. Now I think it's still really bad, but it's not the worst anymore. It's not like absolute, like it's way better than it used to be. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say. It got a damage buff from 1,000 to 1150. And it also got some distract resistance, but that doesn't help it because its only attack cleanses anyways. Yeah, it's still really bad. It's just a basic non-hybrid Hadrosaur with a strike and a heal, and it doesn't really do anything. Yeah, it's a Hadrosaur. What do you expect? Next is Irritator, which is, I would say Irritator is probably the best creature of Carcass tier. Um, it's got it's got okay base stats and it's D-cell immune. It's just its moveset sucks for PvP. I should probably say this is unboosted. This is unboosted PvP. No boosts are taken into account. No raids, no how easy it is to get, no design, no nothing. It's just unboosted PvP. Anyways, yeah, it is one of the best raid creatures in the game, but for PvP, it is not good at all. Its only method of attack is this. It can buff its attack, sure, but that's not going to last very long, and it won't really help you in the long run. Overall, Irritator's not very good. It's really bad. It's not the worst rare in the game, but it's one of the worst. Next is Asukas, which is the second worst rare in the game. Irritator is the third worst. Yeah, this is basically Irritator, but worse. It's a bit slower. It has worse resistances. It's got less health. Wait, did they? What was? Did Irritator? Did that say 4,500 on Irritator? Or did it say 43? Okay, they got Irritator's health right. Okay, I thought I saw something. Anyways, Asukas. Yeah, it's just Irritator, but worse. It does a little bit more damage, but otherwise it's worse. Um, and even then, its damage output still sucks anyways. It doesn't even have use for, like, why does it have two basic moves? Give it group cleansing impact, and that way it'll be at least a little bit better. Like, if you give it group cleansing strike, it'll at least be better than Postosuchus. But no, like group cleansing impact, that would make it better than Postosuchus. But no, they kept it with group cleansing strike, which is just stupid. Capasuchus sucks. Aranosaurus, this is the worst epic in the game. Aranosaurus is so bad. It's another Hadrosaur, surprise, surprise. You're going to be seeing a lot of Hadrosaurs in the low tiers. Um, it's a good raid epic, but for PvP it sucks. It is horribly slow and quite frail. Sure, its base damage is good, but when it only has one method of actually dealing damage, its output is pretty bad. And sure, it has a lot of heals, but that's not really going to help you all that much. Urano's just bad. Next is Parasaurolophus. This one is pretty similar to Iguanodon. It's another common Hadrosaur. It's got a bit more health and damage, but it's slower and it doesn't heal as much. It's still bad. Stegosaurus. This is, I would say, probably the second best creature in the tier. Um, it's still a terrible common. It's it's got pretty mediocre health. It does have some armor. It's got mediocre speed, bad damage output, really bad moveset, no resistances. It just sucks. And the last creature in Carcass tier is Montosaurus, which I would say is the second worst creature in the game right now. It's the worst rare. It is super terrible. It's basically like old Iguanodon, but better. But now it's probably worse than Iguanodon because it does less damage. Sure, it's got a little bit more health than Iguanodon, a little bit more speed, and more healing potential, but it's just less damage. Yeah. Tanosaurus is trash. Anyways, we got a hatchling tier. Hatchling tier is better than carcass tier, but of course still super terrible, no matter what rarity it is. Starting with Ankylosaurus Gen 2. Um, it's bog standard Ankylosaurus stats, really normal Ankylosaur moveset. It's basically just a better version of Stegosaurus. Still really bad. Archaeotherium. This was the worst creature in the game, and then they gave it a pretty fat buff. They gave it a massive health buff. They gave it some more speed, and they gave it decel immune. It's still not good, but it is nowhere near the worst creature in the game anymore. Montosaurus. Montosaurus is another rare. It's basically just Tenontosaurus, but better. Um, there it is. Yeah, it's got more health than Tenontosaurus. Basically the same speed, just barely difference. And it actually has a multiplier. It's only doing 3,000 in 2 turns, which is still trash, but it's definitely doing a lot more than Tenontosaurus is. Hatzegopteryx. Hatzegopteryx is another common. It's another common tank. It's kind of bad. It's got okay base stats, but its moveset just isn't good. It's only got one option for turn 1. Swap and defense isn't very good. Impact and run is... It would be good on something that wasn't just terrible, basically. Force Rockos. I was dumb. I heavily overrated this thing in the past. And I feel extremely stupid for it because this thing is trash. It can only attack every other turn. Its health isn't very good. Its assistances aren't any good. Sure, it's fast, but who cares? With how many tanks there are, that's not gonna matter. Force Rockos is just bad. Sticky Mohawk Gen 2. It's basically just Hatzegopteryx, but frailer and faster. It's a little bit better than Hatzegopteryx. Emphasis on a little bit. Still pretty bad. And two Pendakulous, which is the last creature in Hatchling. Two Pendakulous is really bad rare, of course. It's not as bad as I used to say it is, but it's still pretty bad. It's really frail, not much damage. Sure, it has a counter, but its damage output's still not that great. And it is fast, but it doesn't have any useful resistances. And its moveset is quite mediocre, really. A lot of these counter-attackers, these non-hybrid counter-attackers, really just need better stats. Like, the moveset's already alright, it's just their stats are trash. Alright, Scavenger. Starting with Argentinosaurus. Argentinosaurus is, pretty bad. It's very tanky, but it's extremely slow, and it doesn't do much damage. Extended Critical Strike and Group Disarity Strike are two of the worst moves in the game. They are so bad, and Resilient Strike... Resilient Strike's good, but you need to pair it with something better. Yeah, Argentino's bad. But a rare sauropod that's worse than Argentino is Montosaurus. Because it's got even worse damage, and it is got more average health rather than being tanky. Sure, it's faster, and it's got resistances, but still. Its moveset's better, but really its stats are so terrible that it doesn't make a difference. It's not tanky enough to really get Devastation off reliably. Yeah, it's just bad. Dinonicus, one of the weakest epics in the game. It's basically Dimorphodon, but epic and different. It's got double the damage, and it's a bit faster, but it doesn't have any resistances, and it's got less bleed potential, but it also has a bit more outside of bleed potential. It's still really terrible. It's not gonna get minor swoop off at all. It's really, the most it's gonna do is gonna swap in and then do Fierce Impact. In the next episode, we'll get to what's basically an upgraded version of it. Dinonicus. This is the, this is, I would say, is probably the second weakest cunning in the game. Second or third weakest. It's basically, it's just a weak raptor. It is really frail, doesn't really do much damage. Its main defining factor is that it is really fast. Its moveset is just a standard raptor moveset as well, but with evasive strike attached. And it doesn't have any resistances. It's just unremarkable basic raptor. Iguanodon, another really bad epic. Well, deer non-hybrids have a habit of being really bad. There's one that was added in 2.12 that's not as bad as the other two, but still not very good. It's got alright resistances, but its stats are pretty bad outside of speed, and its moveset is pretty mediocre. Really, it just needs more health and damage to be good. Like, back in the day, it was really nice. Back when it had, like, over 4,000 health and, like, 1,200 damage. That was really good. Also, they need to give it a D-Cell immune back, because it lost that, and that's what makes it worse than the other non-hybrid deer in this tier, which we'll get to in a little bit. Gallimimus. Gallimimus is basically a cunning version of Stygimoloch Gen 2. It's got a bit less health, but it's faster. It has resistances, and actually good resistances at that. And its moveset's basically the same, except it has evasive strike instead of shielding strike. Overall, it's very similar, but I would say it's definitely better. Mostly because of the resistances. Haas Eagle Gen 2. This guy just got a very small buff, and by very small, I mean very small. It doesn't change his position at all. 2.14, they changed out evasive strike for distraction, which is better, but just barely better. It's still got really bad health and damage. Still only has one resistance. Still does not have many modes of damage. It's still really bad. Asukas. Another really bad epic. We're gonna have quite a few of these really bad epics, and the theme that they have is not doing much damage. Yeah, it's average health, low damage, fast, distraction immune, and a really bad moveset. It's just trash. Don't bother with Asukas. Even his Gen 2 is better. Madrongosaurus. Madrongosaurus might it is probably the best common second best common in the tier. It's Madrongosaurus isn't really too bad. It just is not it's still pretty bad though. It's not as I would say it's better than like Dinonicus and obviously better than other commons below it. But it's still not good. It's a counterattacker. It has absolutely horrendous stats. With an I guess kind of mediocre, okay moveset. It's a counterattacker, and that's what you expect out of non-hybrid counterattackers. Anyways, Lucero. This is basically just a slightly better version of Iguanodon that is still really bad. Basically, it's slower, like by like one speed. It trades out. It's got D-Cell immune and 50% vulnerability resistance instead of 75% each, which I would say is definitely better. And it's got decelerating impact instead of superiority impact, which I'd say is a side grade. Overall, it is very slightly better just because of the decel immune, but it is still trash, and don't use it. Yeah. Montosaurus Gen 2. This might be the best creature in the tier. It's either this, Argentinosaurus, or Asukas are the best in the tier. Frail, decent damage, good speed, and a very basic cunning moveset. It does really good against like non-hybrid chompers that aren't Albertosaurus, but outside of that, it's pretty bad. Actually, it's not going to do anything against Acro or Allosaurus Gen 2 either. It's still going to lose to them, but it does good against like Rex and Allosaurus and stuff. And the last creature in Scavenger, and the last creature going over in this video is Asukas. It's basically Asukas, but a different, and I'd say a bit better. I missed it. Where is it? There. It's Asukas. It's frailer, faster, higher crit chance, and more damage, and more resistances. And its moveset is very similar. It just has a really crappy heal move instead of group cleansing strike. Its main advantage over Asukas is it does more damage. It actually beats Androsaurus, which is really nice for a rare. And Asukas doesn't do that, but generally it's still pretty bad. Anyways, that's all for part 1. Honestly, you could even expect part 2 to come out today, because I'm definitely going to be going through the series faster than I went through the last one, last tier list series. So yeah, see you guys in the next one. Subscribe and like if you want. Goodbye.